Have you ever thrown yourself a birthday party, paid for everything, and then sat there in silence while your entire family mocked you in front of strangers? I used to think the worst thing that could happen at a party was someone not showing up, but I was wrong. The worst thing is when they do show up, carrying their contempt wrapped in ribbon and gift wrap. Sometimes, the wound doesn't come from an enemy. It comes from someone who shares your last name. From someone who once held your hand crossing the street. Who brushed your hair before your first day of school. That night I didn't cry. But something inside me died. A feeling that looked a lot like hope. My name is Sarah. I'm 35 and I currently live in Portland, Oregon. I haven't seen my family in almost 2 years. Not out of anger or hatred, but because I was tired. Tired of always being the one to apologize. Tired of trying so hard just to be loved like a normal daughter. But this year, I decided to try again. Just once. I booked a private room at a fancy farmhouse-style restaurant called Maple Grove Kitchen. A place my parents had once raved about because it reminded them of Texas BBQ nights. I picked white hydrangeas, my mother's favorite. I paid for everything, the custom menu, the Italian wine, even the birthday cake. A 2-tier white vanilla buttercream design I chose myself, with copper lettering that read, "Happy birthday Sarah, 35 and free." But when the cake was brought out from the kitchen, I instantly knew something was wrong. It was only 1 tier, obnoxiously bright pink. Like someone was trying to grab attention. And in huge white letters across the top, it read something I'll never forget. Happy birthday, the biggest disappointment in the family. The whole table went dead silent for exactly 1 breath. Then the laughter exploded. So loud another table turned to look. I sat there, hands on my lap, spine stiff as a board, face cold like the ice in my water glass. Lana, my sister, was the one who brought in the cake, trailing behind the server like she was strutting down a runway. "Surprisey!" she shouted, her eyes sparkling with pride. Then she turned to me with a smirk. "Come on, Sarah, relax, it's just a joke." That phrase, "just a joke," is the family's sacred shield. Under its shadow they can insult you, hurt you, and walk away like nothing ever happened. My dad let out a nervous chuckle, muttering, "A bit much but kinda funny, right?" My mom took a sip of her wine like nothing was out of the ordinary. Then, my brother slapped the table, cracking up. "Oh my God, who came up with this? Genius." I looked at each face around the table, people I used to call family, and didn't see a single flicker of apology. I didn't speak. I didn't react. I just pressed my lips together and gave that faint smile I've perfected over decades. One I learned to wear just to survive in a family where love always came with a condition. Lana blew out the candles without asking me, without permission. "Make a wish, Sarah," she said dramatically. "Wish to do something useful for the world." The laughter came again, so natural, like insulting me was just part of the family tradition. I slowly set my fork down on the plate. My eyes began to scan the room. Face by face, chewing cake, sipping wine. So casually unaware that they had just smeared cruelty all over my birthday. They thought I'd stay silent. They thought I'd sit there, endure it like a quiet shadow in the corner. And they almost got it right. I stood up, gently. No glasses clinking, no dramatic noise. I just said, "I need to step outside to make a quick call." No one stopped me. They didn't even look up. I stepped outside, not rushing, though my heart pounded in my chest like a drum. Not from pain, but from something shifting deep inside me. I stood under the string lights hanging from the restaurant's porch. Cold. The damp Portland air cut through my thin jacket. I unlocked my phone, not to call, but to open my notes app. I typed the first line. The cake wasn't the beginning. It was just the last drop. I had stayed quiet for too long. I had let them build a version of me in their heads, one where I was always too sensitive, too much, always upset about nothing. I slipped the phone back in my pocket, took a deep breath, and walked back in. I didn't know what I'd do next. I sat back down at the table, silent like a ghost that had just drifted through a family gathering. Lana was still laughing and chatting with my mom as if the public humiliation earlier had just been an amusing teaser. No one asked if I was okay. No one apologized. But in my mind things started to resurface. Not the cake, but a flood of tangled memories I'd tried to bury under the shell of adulthood. I thought I had forgotten. Turns out, they were just waiting. Clear, sharp, like a punch to the chest. I remembered my 16th birthday. The age when most kids get big parties, balloons, candles, invitations. Me? I came home from school to an empty house. Not a soul in sight. No cake, no card, not even a message. I opened the fridge and found a single sticky note from my mom. At the lake with Lana and Ben, leftover pizza in the microwave? The lake. The three of them went on a weekend picnic. And me? I sat there eating cold pizza in silence, trying to swallow my tears along with the melted cheese. I never brought that up. Because I used to think if I stayed quiet long enough, they'd realize. They never did. When I was 22, I earned a full-ride scholarship for an MBA at Brown. I called to tell Mom. She said, "Oh, good for you. But Lana is really stressed out, her boyfriend just dumped her, can you call her please?" I sat frozen in front of the dark phone screen, with a feeling I didn't have a name for. Like a vital bone had just been broken, and no one heard the crack. Then, at 28, I started a business. An app for budgeting and finance management. I did it all from scratch, wrote the plan, found funding, taught myself UI design. I sent Mom a sample business plan with a message. "I think you'd be proud. This is a dream I've been holding onto for a long time." 4 days later, Lana posted a picture on Facebook at a startup conference. The caption described an app, about 90% identical to the idea I'd sent Mom. I couldn't breathe as I scrolled down and saw Mom's comment. "So proud of my daughter. I always knew you had leadership in you." Not one mention of me, not one word of acknowledgement. I called her that day. My voice trembled, almost cracking through the speaker. "Did you give my business plan to Lana?" She paused a few seconds then replied, flatly. "You should know, in this family, we share everything. Why do you always make things complicated?" Complicated, that word again. I'd been labeled early on, the one who always makes a big deal out of everything. When I spoke up about Ben stealing from my savings account in high school, Mom said, "Your siblings, don't be so petty." When I refused to attend a relative's wedding because he once harassed me, the whole family said I was being dramatic. I used to think maybe it was me, maybe I was too sensitive, maybe I needed to learn to put up with things. But then one day, when I was 30, Lana accidentally sent me a voice note meant for Mom. Her voice sneering. "Sarah, she's just the family's glitch draft." "And my mom?" She laughed and replied, "Yeah, well, she's smart, but no one can stand her attitude." I listened to that recording 12 times. Not to torture myself, but to be sure I wasn't imagining it. After that I stayed silent. I didn't confront anyone. I just stepped back. No Thanksgiving calls, no Christmas gifts, no appearances at family events. Not that they mentioned me anymore, anyway. But tonight, when they all laughed together at that insulting cake, I knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I was no longer that girl eating cold pizza by the microwave. I was no longer the one sending plans hoping for acknowledgement. I was a 35-year-old woman, independent, self-sufficient, and for the first time, no longer afraid of being called complicated. I sat there, looking around, wondering how many people out there live like I once did. Shrinking themselves to fit someone else's mold, just to be seen as pleasant, easygoing. Riley, the only non-blood relative at the table, quietly reached under the table and placed his hand over mine. He didn't say anything. His eyes were enough to let me know I wasn't alone anymore. I looked up at Lana, who was now talking about the new podcast she was launching. I smiled faintly. Now I knew what I was going to do. Not to get revenge, but to end a performance that had lasted over 3 decades. I left the restaurant that night without a word. Lana called something behind me that sounded like, "Don't be mad." but I didn't turn back. I'd turned back too many times before, and every time, it earned me another knife in the back. The hotel I stayed at was a small boutique chain near the Willamette River, where every room had a name instead of a number. Mine was called Aspen Winds. It sounded poetic, but all I felt was a storm of chaos twisting in my chest. I opened my laptop out of instinct, not to escape, but to find something. I needed to be sure I wasn't crazy. I pulled up the old email thread, the one I sent my mom nearly a year ago after I finalized my full business plan for the finance app I'd built. Wiselane, a platform that used AI to analyze personal spending. I'd included a demo, a profit model, and a user behavior breakdown I spent weeks perfecting. The subject line I wrote was, "Mom, I think you'll love this, it's the thing I'm most proud of." She never replied. But that night, at the hotel, I looked at the email history and saw a tiny gray line I'd never noticed before. This email was forwarded to lanhamgreenfield@gmail.com on 3/12 at 9:42 p.m. I felt a chill crawl down my spine, not because of betrayal, but because of how effortlessly, how familiarly it happened. Like it wasn't the first time. I checked Lena's social media, scrolled through each post, each photo from the start of the year, until I stopped at a picture of a sign outside a new property. Maple Stay Lodge. A quiet place for new dreams. The caption underneath. From vision to reality. Grateful to the universe for giving me the power to turn dreams into action. Next to it was a growth chart of bookings in the first quarter. The layout matched the model I had built, almost exactly. I didn't shake. The only thing I felt was crystal clarity. Like stepping through fog and finally seeing the cliff's edge ahead. All my life I had asked, why would they do this to me? But that night, the question no longer mattered. I didn't need an explanation. I needed boundaries. I opened a new document and titled it, The Cutoff Response Plan. I divided the page into 3 sections. Misused information. Recurring manipulative behavior. Legal and public response actions. I wasn't planning to explode. I wasn't going to make a scene. I didn't want revenge. I just needed them to know I was awake now. And this time, I wasn't coming back. The next morning, I reached out to an old friend, Maya, an intellectual property lawyer based in San Francisco. I sent her all the attachments, access logs, even the notes I'd stored since the beginning of the Wiselane project. "You've got enough evidence to send a cease and desist," Maya said after reviewing everything. "If you want, I can draft a letter demanding that Lana take down any model based on your content." I smiled, but not out of relief. Because what I felt wasn't victory. It was a kind of sorrow. I don't want her to delete posts. I want her to know. This time, I won't stay silent while she blatantly steals my work. That afternoon, I went to a cafe near my hotel, the same place that used to be a dusty old bookstore when I was little. Now it had been renovated into a co-working space, all soft amber lighting and the scent of fresh pine. I opened my laptop, logged into Wiselane's internal security system and revoked all access to the original documents. Then I sent a single email, no subject line, no explanation, to my mother. As of today, any use, sharing, or exploitation of materials related to the Wiselane project without my written consent will be considered a legal violation. Please forward this to Lana. I will not send it again. No greeting, no signature. I just hit send and shut my laptop. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for drawing a boundary. That night I got a missed call from my mother at 11:12 p.m. No voicemail. No follow-up email. Lana, however, posted a vague story. "It's sad when people choose lawyers over family to solve things." Underneath was a sad face emoji and a wine glass. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. They were still playing the same old game. Only this time, I'd walked away, with the queen in hand. On Saturday night, I received a group text from my mother. "Dinner at the old house 6 p.m., Family matters, don't be late, Sarah. No questions. As if everything that had happened was just wind skimming across a lake. I stared at my phone, feeling like I was being summoned to a trial, where the defendant, the witness, and the jury all shared my last name. I still went. But this time, I didn't show up gentle or agreeable. I came to end the way they treated me. The old house sat in a quiet suburb south of Portland. The red-tiled roof had faded, and the front yard still held those dry lavender bushes my mother loved to show off to the neighbors. I parked outside, opened my bag and reviewed the printed documents. Each page, each system log, each piece of evidence detailing the violations of my privacy and unauthorized use of my work. I walked in without greeting, without small talk. Lana was chatting in the kitchen, Mom was setting the table, and Ben was buried in his phone as always. "Sarah's here," my mom chimed, overly cheerful. "Sit down, sweetie, we made your favorite roast chicken." I pulled out a chair and sat down, placing a white envelope squarely in the center of the table, right between the bread basket and the sauce bowl. One by one, their eyes slowly turned toward me. Lana frowned. Ben paused his scrolling. Mom froze mid-scoop of gravy. "What's this?" Lana asked, trying to laugh it off, but her voice grated like sand between teeth. I opened the envelope and pulled out the pages, laying them across the table. Slowly. With a steady hand. "I think it's time we stopped pretending," I said, looking straight at my mother. "This is the access log from Wiselane's internal system. It shows a device, with an IP address, matching Ben's laptop, tried to access my secure folders. 3 times. Ben's mouth dropped. "What?" I didn't. I raised my hand to cut him off. "And this," I continued, picking up the next page, "is proof that you forwarded my startup materials to Lana the very next day after I sent them to you. No explanation, no permission, no request." The room felt like it had been vacuumed of all air. Lana was the first to break the silence, voice rising. "You're overreacting. I just got inspired, okay? Ideas belong to everyone. I just built on it a little." I looked at her, my gaze cold as steel. "Inspired? Lana, you copied the exact structure of my financial model. You used the same metrics I created for the original pitch. You even used the customer behavior algorithm, something I personally coded over 2 months. Don't call it inspiration. Call it what it is, theft." Ben looked around, lips twitching as if to defend someone. But nothing came out. "And my mother?" She dabbed her mouth with a napkin and spoke in that eerie, composed tone. "Sweetheart, in a family we share. We work together, we help one another. Why are you making such a big deal out of this?" I leaned back in my chair, nausea creeping up my throat, but I kept my voice even. "You've used me like an idea machine. For years, every time I created something worth being proud of, you found a way to either make it Lana's achievement or paint me as the difficult one. That birthday party wasn't the first time. But this time, you crossed a line." Lana slammed her spoon down on the plate, the clatter sharp as glass. "All of this over a few stupid files? God, you're so selfish. What does blowing it up even accomplish?" I looked at her, my expression calm as a frozen lake. "Because I'm finally old enough to understand, when you stay silent, others write your story for you. And I won't let you do that to me anymore." I stood up and pulled out one last sheet from my bag. "This is a formal notice. If anything like this happens again, including unauthorized data access, use of my intellectual property, or spreading false information, I will press charges." "I'm not joking." My mother shook her head, her voice dropping into a solemn, almost scalding tone. "Sarah, you're hurting your own family. You're threatening the people who love you most." I let out a soft laugh. A smile with no joy. "No, Mom. Family is where you feel safe. Where no one takes your ideas and posts them online as their own. Where you're not made into the punchline of your own birthday. What I have here isn't family. It's a network of control, manipulation, and exploitation." And I just ended it. I gathered the papers, folded them neatly, and left the envelope on the table. Next time if anyone wants to discuss, talk to my lawyer. I turned and walked away. No one stopped me. Not a single voice called my name. Outside, Portland was damp, the streets cloaked in fog. But inside me, everything had become crystal clear. For the first time, I wasn't walking away with anger. I left that family dinner like someone stepping out of a fire scene. No visible wounds, but everything inside had both collapsed and been reborn. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just felt a solid kind of quiet expanding in my chest. I knew this. Saying it to their faces wasn't enough. They'd twist the story. Blame me again for blowing things out of proportion. They were used to living in the version they created, where I was always the overly sensitive, moody one. But this time, I would be the one telling the story. Truthfully, clearly, in the light. On a platform they couldn't control. I texted Nina, my longtime friend and colleague, now an editor for the Women Entrepreneur section at Forbes Women. I have a story, personal, true, never told, and it's time. Nina. I'm listening, call me. It took me 2 hours to tell her everything, the belittling, the stolen work, the way I had quietly financed family projects, only to have my contributions erased. I was the only one funding Lana's podcast in its first year, when she couldn't even pay for hosting, I said, calmly, without dramatizing. It didn't need it. The truth was enough. My mom borrowed money from me to fix the house, and 3 months later, they all went on a Bahamas cruise. And you have proof of this? Nina asked. I nodded. It's all in the folder I shared via email, bank transfers, emails, system logs, screenshots of conversations. Sarah, Nina said after a brief pause. This piece won't be gentle, it's going to hit people who aren't used to being held accountable. I don't need an apology, I replied. I just need to reclaim my voice. 3 days later, the article was scheduled for publication. Title: The Silent Investor. When Your Own Family Denies You. Byline: Nina Park. Source: Forbes Women. In the article, their names weren't directly mentioned. But the details, the timelines, the blurred-out screenshots, said more than enough. There were even receipts of the nearly $130,000 I had sent over 5 years to help the family. There was a screenshot of the financial model I had designed for the Lane app, replicated line for line in Lana's project. There was also a message from my mother. Don't tell anyone you invested, let Lana put her name on it. It looks better for the family. The article went live at 7:05 a.m. on Tuesday. By 8:15, I had over 50 emails. By noon, the hashtag #InvestorWithoutCredit started trending on Twitter. A female CEO I'd met at last year's Women in Leadership Summit retweeted the article with the caption, "Not everyone forgotten is weak, some stay silent to avoid bowing down." A university professor shared the article in an academic group, commenting, "A painful but real example. Women are often exploited emotionally and intellectually within their own families." I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate. I just sat quietly in my apartment on the 17th floor staring out the window over the city of Portland, where the streets kept bustling, where no one knew a small earthquake had just taken place inside one woman's soul. That afternoon, Lana posted a story on Instagram. A black and white photo of her curled up on a chair, eyes puffy and red, with a caption that read, "Family is where you're loved, until someone uses you for clicks." I laughed, not bitterly, but with relief. She was still performing, playing the role of the wounded victim of kindness. And me, I didn't need to perform anymore. I posted a single line on Twitter. Silence doesn't always mean weakness. Some are just waiting for the right moment to speak. This time, without asking permission. That night my mother called, I let it ring 3 times then declined. 2 hours later she sent a message. "You're doing this to your own family? After all the sacrifices I made for you over the years. Did you ever think about our feelings?" I didn't reply. Instead, I sent a message to Nina. Thank you for helping me tell my story my way. Then I opened my email and drafted an internal memo to the Wiselane development team. Starting next month, the company will establish a small scholarship fund dedicated to women who have been manipulated, undermined, or held back by their own families. The name of the fund? Reclaim. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a crowd chanting my name. Quiet joy was enough. The Forbes article continued to spread over the next 72 hours. I didn't post anything else, but social media didn't stop. The public response was largely supportive. Many, especially women, messaged me saying they too had had their work erased by family, or been called selfish for setting boundaries. Their messages were like small glowing fires, warm and haunting. But I knew that silence wouldn't last. My family didn't apologize, they only knew how to regain control of the narrative. On Sunday night, Lana posted a response to me. 10 photos in a carousel, starting with a shot of her by a window, soft light falling across her face, eyes slightly red. The caption? Love shouldn't be exposed like a wound. I once admired my sister, until she turned us into enemies for attention. Below that was a long drawn-out message about how every family has conflicts, how Sarah was never easy to live with, and don't let one side of the story distract from genuine kindness. One line made me laugh out loud. I just hope she knows that no matter what, we're still willing to forgive her. Forgive me? What exactly had they done that required forgiveness? I wasn't angry, not anymore. But I knew this: if I stayed silent, they'd keep pushing. Lana was trying to win back public sympathy with emotional theatrics. A polished PR campaign dressed in tears and carefully timed glances. I didn't respond with words, I responded with fact. That night, I posted a single tweet on my X account, formerly Twitter, with a simple caption. Not everyone who cries is a victim. Here are a few of the things I helped my family with, the ones they said weren't worth mentioning. Attached were 3 images. A $18,000 transfer receipt from my company account to Lana's in 2021. Description: podcast platform setup. An email from my mother. Can you help your sister cover the rest of the vacation home? She's overwhelmed. I'll never forget your kindness. A signed, never paid loan agreement between me and my mother, listing $47,200 for roof renovation project. I didn't add any commentary. The internet was smart enough to understand. A columnist for an independent news outlet commented right under the post. Lana, if you're crying on Instagram and someone else has receipts, maybe just sit this one out. Another user wrote. Your sister's the ATM and you're the actress. Problem is, you're not convincing. By the next morning, my post had over 200,000 likes and nearly 50,000 shares. I sat in my small apartment, sipping coffee, watching the numbers rise. I wasn't retaliating, I was clarifying. Lana after that went silent for almost 24 hours. By late afternoon she posted a tearful story. No words, just the song You Don't Know Me playing in the background, and one caption. I've always loved my family, even when it hurt. That made me laugh out loud. And I posted one more photo. For my birthday, the cake with the message. Happy birthday to the biggest disappointment. The caption was just a question. If this is what love looks like, then I opt out of family. Everything exploded. People started digging up Lana's old posts, matching the timeline of her success with the transfers I'd made. The more they looked, the more coincidences they found. My mom chose silence. She didn't post anything, didn't text. But I knew she was watching. Like she always did, observing from the shadows, pulling strings from afar. Ben tried to play neutral by posting a quote from a self-help book. Family is where you learn forgiveness, even when you're not understood. That post got ratioed in under an hour. People started replying with memes, photos of the birthday cake, and dubbed him the family gaslight guru. I didn't engage. No words, no shares, no corrections. Everything I needed to say had been said. Now, I let the truth stand on its own. By the end of that day, I received an email from a national women's business organization. We'd like to invite Miss Sarah Greenfield to be a guest speaker at this year's conference, themed, Reclaiming Your Voice in the Silence. I didn't respond right away. I just read the subject line and looked out at the darkening Portland sky through my window. The city lights flickered beneath me like steady breaths. I didn't come back for revenge. I came back to reclaim the right to live as myself, without being diminished. A week after everything went viral, I posted one final message. Not to explain. Not to strike back. Not to spark a new wave. But to draw a period. I wrote it at 2 a.m. in my small apartment. The one I had painted myself. Where I hung each frame by hand. A space where no one called me too much, where no one asked me to apologize for having a voice. I opened my laptop, rested my fingers on the keyboard, and felt lighter than I ever had, in silence. I don't need an apology. I never did. What I needed was acknowledgement, not for my success but for my existence. I stayed silent when I was forgotten on my 16th birthday. I stayed silent when my work was used without my consent. I stayed silent when my effort was recycled into someone else's achievement. And they called me sensitive. The problem child. The one who was hard to love. No one asked if I was okay. They just said, "You're fine, right?" So this is the last time. I don't need them to love me. I just need them to stop telling the wrong story about me. Family shouldn't be the place where you have to fight just to exist. And if someone reading this has also stayed silent, know this. You are not alone. I chose to walk away. Not because I hate them, but because I need space to breathe. I need a space that's mine, where I'm seen, where I'm valued, where I am human. I hit post. No edits, no rereads. The piece went up on Twitter, LinkedIn, and my personal website. I left everything open, no interaction limits. No more fear. No more avoidance. Within less than 12 hours, thousands of shares poured in. Not because it attacked anyone, but because so many people saw themselves in it. Messages flooded my inbox like an unstoppable tide. Some were just a single line. "Thank you. I thought I was alone. I've been through this too. I see you." One single mother messaged me to say she left her parents' house after reading my post. That she had been forced for years to relive a childhood of silence, just to keep peace in the family. I read that message 3 times. Each time, I clenched my hands like I was holding on to something broken, but still full of meaning. And I knew I needed to do something bigger than just write. That afternoon, I called Jess, my assistant since the early days of founding Wiselane. 3 days later, I announced the launch of a fund called Fracture, a fund for survivors of emotional manipulation within families. I posted one simple image, a hand resting on the left side of the chest. The place we touch when we swear, when we hurt, and when we begin again. The caption: "Not every wound bleeds, but everyone deserves a place to heal." Within 48 hours, over 70 people applied for grants from Fracture. Some wanted to escape toxic living situations. Some needed help covering therapy costs. Some just needed a small amount to start over, after cutting ties with abusive parents. I knew I couldn't save the world. But I could help someone stop pretending to be okay, the way I once did. That night, I sat in my kitchen, eating a simple plate of chicken and rice. No candles. No wine. No occasion. Just peace. I didn't hear from my mother again. Lana hadn't posted since social media turned on her. Ben had gone completely silent. Finally learning the weight of silence, not when I endured, but when I disappeared from their lives. A journalist reached out asking if I'd consider writing a book about my experience. I replied, "Maybe, but not to tell a sob story. To show others they can survive and be real after leaving the family spiral behind." As night fell, I played an old song I used to listen to back in freshman year of college. Back when I still believed that if I tried hard enough, people would love me the right way. Now I know. Not everyone will love you. But you can learn to love yourself, without asking anyone's permission. Seattle welcomed me back with its fine April drizzle and the honest, aching air of the Pacific Northwest. But this time, I didn't return with my head down. I rolled my suitcase up to my 10th floor apartment, turned on the kitchen light and exhaled deeply. No texts from my mom. No calls from Lana. Not a word from Ben. And strangely, I didn't feel empty. I felt light. Like I'd just untied the rope that had been choking me for 35 years. 3 days after returning to Seattle, I stood on stage at the Women Reclaiming Voice conference. The same event where I sat in the back row 3 years ago taking silent notes like a shadow. This time, I was the keynote speaker. I stepped onto the stage in a charcoal gray blazer. Not to look powerful, but to remind myself just how far I'd come from the dinner table with that humiliating birthday cake. I opened with a line that wasn't in my script. I used to think that healing meant needing an apology from the people who hurt me. Now I know, what I really needed was to stop waiting for them to understand me. The room fell silent. Not with discomfort, but with true, undivided listening. I spoke about being called too sensitive, just because I knew how to say no. About the times my work was taken and credited to someone else. About the parties where I was physically present but completely unseen. And about that moment, when I stood up from the dinner table, without asking, without looking back, for the first time, stepping out of the role of the good daughter. At the end of my talk, I didn't call for rebellion. I simply said, "You don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to stop accepting what harms you." As I stepped off the stage, I didn't feel proud. I felt allowed to exist, and for me that alone was a revolution. That evening I received an email from a 21-year-old girl in Ohio. "Dear Sarah, I just left home after your speech. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I know I can't keep living like a shadow. I don't want to become a replica of the pain my mother endured and then passed on to me. Thank you for stepping out of the cycle so that people like me know we can too." I cried when I finished reading. Not out of pain but because, finally, tears could mean release, not surrender. From then on my life took a different path, not glamorous, not loud, but real. I started hosting small group sessions, just 15 or 20 people each time, focused on those who had experienced emotional manipulation from their own family. We sat in a circle. No one above. No one preaching. Just listening. And voices saying, "I've been there too." I accepted podcast invitations. I wrote articles for women's magazines. I appeared in a community campaign titled "Healing Doesn't Need Permission." I didn't name my family. I didn't attack them. I didn't need to. Because every time I showed up simply as Sarah, not as a role, not carrying the weight they put on me, was a victory. Riley, the quiet companion through this entire journey, was still by my side. He never said, "I'm proud of you." He just placed his hand gently on my back after I stepped off a stage, or after I sat in silence post-therapy, and said one thing: "You lived your truth, Sarah, that's enough." One evening, I sat alone on my balcony, glass of wine in hand, watching the city lights come alive. The breeze was crisp, not biting, not soft. Just enough to remind me I could still feel. I opened an old photo of me at 25, holding a small award for a community finance initiative, eyes full of hope and naivety. I whispered, "I forgive you. Forget the version of me who tried so hard to fit into the box they built." Then, I set the photo down, opened my phone, went to Fracture's homepage, and approved 3 more grants. No one knew my name behind those funds. They didn't need to. I wasn't doing it for credit. I was doing it so someone else didn't have to walk through the dark alone. Sarah's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from strangers, but from family, the place that's supposed to be the safest. But she proved that healing doesn't require an apology, only the courage to choose truth and stand by yourself. By breaking the cycle of manipulation, Sarah didn't just save herself, She lit the way for hundreds of others to reclaim their voice. Freedom doesn't come from forgiveness. It comes from no longer fearing being rewritten. What do you think about Sarah's journey? Have you experienced something similar? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and honest stories about life and family.